Hello, everyone, and welcome to A New Direction. My name is Jay Izzo, and oh man, do we have another great show for you? So easy, great author, great book, great show. It's so easy to do. And today, Shadan Kapri writes this outstanding book called Discover Your Passion, The Path to Your Authentic Self. Wow. That's all I'm going to tell you. Folks, listen, here's the deal with this book. It is not just a book to read. It is a book to do. It is a workbook. It is going to work you through. Listen, I'm a coach and I help people find their purpose and stuff like that. And passion and purpose go hand in hand here. Okay. And there's a lot of misconceptions about passion. Okay. And you know, Shadan does such a great job of reminding all of us about passion. And she says something to this effect. I'm paraphrasing. This is the Coach Jay paraphrase. Okay. It is, you know, you don't have to give up your day job to do your passion. So many of us think that, oh, you know, we go to the graduation ceremony. I spoke at graduations, right? We go to the graduations and they go, you know, follow your passions, right? Well, that's not always necessarily what you want to do. Like, you know, just decide that we're going to sell the house and live on the street and just go work on passions, because it's not a way it always works. And I love what she does there, but the workbook is something so outstanding. So we're going to talk to her in just a minute. But before we do, I want to walk us through our 4 steps. We're 4-part people: physical, mental, emotional, spiritual people. Fact of the matter is, if we're not growing, we're dying. And we need to be working on ourselves every day of our lives in our 4 areas. So what we do every week is I check in with you to find out how you're doing in these 4 areas. So physical, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. And we scale of 1 to 10, 1 being, oh, it just doesn't get any worse. 10 being, oh my gosh, it just can't get any better. And so we're going to have 5 being average. So for instance, in the physical realm, right? How would you rate yourself when it comes to eating right, getting enough sleep, drinking enough water, getting enough exercise, right? What number would you give either? 5 being average. Now, look, if your number is a 2, okay, I don't want you to go, oh man, I just am awful. No. That's your starting place. That's the place we're going to work from, that we can improve to, okay? So if you're a 2 today, how do we get to a 2.5, right? You know, maybe it's, you know, I need to go out and take a walk. Maybe it's, I need to get my hand out of the bag of chips, or, you know, whatever it may be, right? You know, get my sleep schedule right? Whatever it may be, right? Drink a little more water. That's your first number. Second number is your mental, intellectual number. Folks, I can sit on discovering your passion. I could be sitting on this book. Do you know how much I will absorb by sitting on her book? Not a thing, okay? You've got to be an active participant in your growth when it comes to your mental and intellectual growth. And what that means is that not only do you have to read a book or listen to a book, and as I tell my clients, listening to a book is great, but do me a favor. When you get out of the car, write one thing down you're going to take action on, right? That you heard listening to the book, you're gonna take action on it. And you know what Shadan has done here is she's given you workbook stuff that you can work on. So you could get, if you have this book, you can take it with you. And by the way, she's going to be sending me books that I'm going to be able to give away to my audience. So you need to reach out to me and you need to get one of these books. All right. So that's the second number. All right. So your mental, intellectual. Third number is the emotional. Break it up into 2 things, right? One is, how well are you able to control your emotions under stress and pressure? And you'll say with these, I don't get stressed out. Well, okay, it's Christmas time. How good are you standing in those lines? And the lady can't find her credit card. Or the guy realizes he got to go get back another toy because he forgot one of the kids. So he's got to go get another toy. And so the line, how good are you there? How about when somebody takes your parking spot at the mall? Right? Cuts you off, right? How's that? Is that good for you? Okay. So how well you control your emotions there? And then the second part is, how well are you able to tap into and understand the emotions of another human being? You know, sometimes we need to increase our emotional vocabulary, folks. Because, you know, sometimes we look at people in generalities of happy, sad, angry, but there's subtleties to it. And people want to be understood on a very specific and deep level. And so finding the subtleties of emotion are so important. And Shadan makes a great point in the book. There's really two basic emotions, love and fear. Right? And then there's subtleties that come off those two. And if you ever saw Plotchik's emotional wheel, you combine these different emotions together and these subtleties, and it comes up with all the other emotions that we experience. And by the way, we all experience them. I don't care what culture you're from. We all experience the same amount of emotions. We're all identically the same. We may express them slightly differently, but every culture in the world deals with the same emotions. How well are you able to understand them and tap into that? We all want to be heard and understood. And we want to do it on an emotional level. So combining those two things on a scale of 1 to 10, how would you say you're doing? And then finally, there's a spiritual level. And I know that some of you are so anti-spiritual. You go, there is no such thing. There's no spiritual part of the... No, we're all spiritual beings living in a human body. Okay. The fact of the matter is you move the physical, the mental, and the emotional, and guess what? You have a spiritual being. And we operate in spiritual realms every day. And I'm not trying to be weird, but it's true. You operate in faith every day. You drank your cup of coffee believing it wasn't poisonous. You pushed the button on your car believing it was going to start. You're sitting in the chair right now believing it's not going to fall down. You walk across the floor believing that there's not going to be a hole. You're making plans for the future believing that they're going to happen, and they haven't happened yet. That's all faith. That's a spiritual concept, right? Fact of the matter is there is the human spirit, and Shadan talks about that too. And the human spirit wants to live and move and wants to find a purpose and a passion for living. There's something deep within inside us that's not emotional, that's not physical, that's not mental, that says there's got to be something more. That's a spiritual concept. And then what brings you back to centeredness or peace in the midst of chaos? Is it God? Is it nature? Is it meditation? Is it something else? And then I got a question for you. How's that working for you? Well, those 4 areas are like the air in the tire of your car. If one tire is too low, what happens? Well, it's going to be hard to steer and it's hard to keep the car on the road. If all 4 tires are low, what happens is over the course of time, you're going to ruin the car. And none of us want that. But speaking of someone who's got all her tires raised to the right level, her name is Shadan Kapri. She's a prominent author, attorney, and advocate based in Spokane, Washington, right near where I used to be. Best known for her impact writings on social justice and human rights. Her most notable work, The Red Movement, Social and Environmental Justice in the 21st Century, has garnered critical acclaim and recognition, becoming a bestseller in multiple categories on Amazon. Her work has been described as both a beacon of light and a call to arms, reflecting her commitment to inspiring others to join the fight against injustice. In addition to the Red Movement, Shadan has authored her latest book, Discovering Your Passion, which encourages readers to pursue their true calling through their passions. Her contributions to literature have earned her several accolades, including the International Impact Book Award for her efforts in promoting sustainable practices and environmental leadership. Through her writing, Shadan Kapri continues to be a powerful voice for change, advocating for living the life you were destined to live without boundaries. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the show and welcome to the first time, Shadan Kapri. Welcome to A New Direction.
Thank you so much for having me.
Well, it's great to have you with me here. I love this book. There is no doubt about it. This is one of my favorite books I've read. I have got it so dog-eared and so much yellow in this book. I'm not sure that there's any white in this book at all to read, because I've highlighted, I think it's almost the entire book. So it really is that good. I want to read something. I read it. I told you this is one of my favorite things. She wrote this, folks. I'm going to read this to you. She wrote this. This is right before the introduction. And I want you to hear just how beautiful this is. So stay with me. What if creating the art and doing the work is the reward? It's not about recognition. It's about doing meaningful work that aligns with your soul and makes you want to get up in the morning. This work has to be created so you can continue to live with purpose and passion in life. If doing the work excites you, then it's worth doing. It's about being true to yourself the one person you owe it to. She wrote that. How beautiful is that, right? Um, Shadan, in the introduction, you quote Friedrich Nietzsche,
Mhm.
creating, that is the great salvation from suffering. I am so blown away by that page 14 in this book about creating. Why is that the start for finding our passion, is the creation part of it?
Well, it involves action, and that's the thing is we can all have great ideas, and people do. People have amazing ideas. I think the problem is the execution of the ideas. And a lot of times people want it to be perfect, right? They write a book, they write an article, they're like, oh, it has to be perfect. But the first draft isn't going to be perfect. It's going to be messy, and it's going to have lots of, things that are spelled wrong and the grammar's wrong. And so when you create, you have to sort of put that idea, that aspiration of perfection, you have to put it to the wayside. And trust me, this is something I had to learn and relearn and relearn and relearn, because every time I would start writing, I would be like, oh, is this good enough? There would be a voice inside of me like, well, no, this isn't good. And then finally I said, if I'm going to write anything at all in this world, I have to put that voice aside and just write. And then I can come back and revise and re-edit and use six other, drafts. And so it's the creation, it's the execution. And I think a lot of times it's the fear that keeps us from executing.
It's so interesting that you bring this up, that you say that, because I've interviewed a lot of people on on creation and the creator mindset. I'm thinking of
Mhm.
Nir Bashan, who wrote the creator mindset, and you know he makes a point of saying there's no problem that creativity cannot solve, and and we get so caught up into perfection that what happens is we don't actually create anything,
Mhm.
because who was it? Kara Golden, who owns Hint Water, who I interviewed on the show. She said to me, she said, Jay, sometimes you just got to build the plane while it's in the air. You know?
Yeah,
Right?
exactly. And I think for me, especially, since having the background that I have, there's different ways to write, right? There's technical writing, there's legal writing, there's journalism writing. And so finding your voice and finding what's authentic to you, I think is really important. And a lot of times we write because we want people to like it or read it. But that's not why you write. You write because you have something to share. And if it resonates with people, that is the cherry on, on top of the cake. But you still have to create. You have to create that art. You have to create that music. It's not about people telling you that you're, great. I mean, it's nice to get compliments, but really it's about that process of creation. And when you create, I know in my life, my suffering goes down because I'm focused on something positive. I'm not focused on the problems. I'm not focused on, how can I prevent this next thing from happening? I'm focused on making something in this world. And there's something so incredibly powerful about that, just to heal ourselves, and then if it helps others, then it's like, that's amazing.
Double bonus, right? That's what it is. Chapter 1, discovering your dreams. What a great way. I want to quote something here that you said. I'd love to have you expand on it for me. The first step in discovering your passion is to rediscover and acknowledge those dreams you deserted long ago.
Mhm.
To discover your passion, you need to go back. Help us, because we don't like going back. We tell people move forward. We don't tell them to go back. But you're saying here, if we're going to discover our dreams, we actually have to look back. Look back at what?
Well, I tell people you have to go back to your childhood and look at the things that you loved to do when you were a child. Because when we're a child, we're not indoctrinated yet. We're not sort of bought into this idea of, oh, you have to be productive at this and that, and this is a good use of your time. When you're a child, you do whatever your heart wants you to do. So I had this conversation with my husband. When he was a child, he loved to do art. And as he got older, he was told, well, is that going to really be your future? Is that a good use of your time? And he stopped creating art. I mean, I can't even tell you how many decades, like 15, 20 years, he stopped creating art. And when we got married, I remember I had a conversation with him about it. And I was like, well, what did you love to do as a child? And so he gave me this big list of things he loved to do. And I said, well, why did you stop? And he said, well, it didn't make money, or my parents thought it wasn't a good idea, or I had other things to do that are more important. And I said, okay, that's fair. I mean, those are all legitimate, reasons, but to find your passion, you have to go back. You have to go back and figure out who you were before the world tried to make you into something that you're not. And that is something I struggled with for a really long time as well. And so a lot of this book is sort of things that I had to overcome and learn and change so that I could really get back to who I am, and not this idea of who I should be.
Mm. And I think this is a great, what you just said here is a great segue into chapter 2 called Rediscovering Yourself.
Mhm.
Because you talk about how we can lose ourselves in our life because of the labels and the roles that we have to play.
Mhm.
Wife, mother, daughter, husband, employee, whatever it is, right? We have a number of labels that we all have, and you say that unfortunately, all too often in life, we begin to believe the labels and roles that are bestowed
Mhm.
onto us by others, and then people ask the question, and I think it's a great question you ask here: how can I rediscover who I am when I feel like I've disappeared?
Mhm.
How many times have we heard that, right?
And honestly, I feel that it happens to all of us. I feel that, as you go through life, there's sort of this idea of what you should be doing at 22 and 25 and 30 and 35 and 40. And so we all buy into this idea, and we sort of lose who we are because we're so fixated on, getting that, getting married, buying a house, advancing in our careers, that becomes such a huge focus that we kind of leave ourselves behind. And then we achieve those things, and this is something you hear about all the time. You achieve those things, and then you have the midlife crisis. And then
Right.
you're sitting in your house in your, you're in your 40s or 50s, and you're looking around and you're saying, okay, I did the things I wanted to do, so why am I not happy? And
Right.
I think that is more common than people are willing to admit. And that's where we start to see alcoholism. We start to see people doing impulsive things, gambling, affairs. I don't know if you've read The War of Art by Stephen Pressfield, but he does an amazing job of talking about this. It's a great book. I mean, I think everyone should read it. And he talks about when you don't pursue the things that fill you up, you then go after distractions. And a lot of times those distractions are destructive. You start to do things that you normally wouldn't do, and even it can be simple as just strolling the internet for hours at a time. I've done it, and I think to myself, I could have been creating something. I could have been doing something instead of just watching other people. And so I think it's really important to remember goals are important. And trust me, I grew up in a family that was very, very, very goal oriented. But at the same time, you can't forget who you are. You can't forget the things that you love. And those are independent of goals. Those are independent of our culture. Those are independent of what society says we should be doing at a certain age. And I'm a big believer, I mean, I remember when I turned 30, all my friends were getting married, and I wasn't even close to getting married. That was not even in my periphery, the
Right.
idea of getting married. And I thought, what, why do I have to live by these rules? I mean, why? It's my life. Why do I have to buy into these things that don't fit me or that are not the best for me? And slowly I started to figure out that the more I started to listen to myself and rediscover who I was before the world tried to tell me who to be, the more I found that light inside of me that started to come back. And even my family was like, "You're back." And I'm like, "Yeah, I was here the whole time, but I got I got distracted by all the things I should be doing that I didn't do the things that I needed to do."
Yeah, expectations are killers for us all, aren't they?
Hmm. Hmm.
Because
Hmm.
we grow up in families, and by the way, I hope people don't hear me bashing families,
No, 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 no.
because
Mm-mm,
that's not what I'm doing here. But what I'm
mm-mm,
saying is
mm-mm,
they're doing their best, but they have a certain set of expectations for you when you grow up.
mhm,
My mom and dad had a certain set of expectations of me. They
mhm,
expected me to do certain things. They didn't mean to do this, but they would squelch my dreams by saying, that's foolish. You shouldn't think like that, or you shouldn't dream about that. That's not realistic. And we get cynical, and a little we get a lot cynical, and we get a little, and we start drawing in a little sarcasm about how the world works and operates, because these expectations changed our mindset in terms of being
mhm,
able to go, gosh, but I really do love that.
Mhm.
And that becomes a challenge for us. Don't you agree?
Mhm. Mhm. Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think what and it's not even just families, it's society as a whole.
School.
It's
Yeah.
school, it's your friends, it's what other people are doing. This whole idea. I mean, there's a quote about how comparison is the death of joy, and I really believe that.
Well,
We
they say compare and despair.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Compare and despair. I like that. And we look around and we see what other people are doing, and oftentimes we think like, well, why am I not doing that? Or why am I so behind? Or how come this person has, done this and I haven't? And I've done that. I've been guilty of that. And I've noticed that every time I do that, it's almost like I'm killing myself in a really slow and like difficult way, because it's then not about what I really want or who I really am. It becomes about keeping up with the Joneses. And there's nothing more destructive to passion, to being authentic, to living your life on your own rules than trying to keep up with the Joneses. Than looking at your neighbor and saying, wow, they just bought a huge boat. How come I don't have a boat? And then what, you end up working more at a job you don't love, that's soul sucking, so that you can buy a boat that sits in your garage for majority of the year. So I think these are all things that we go through, but no one really talks about it. No one talks about the societal pressure, especially as women and even as men, that we get, right? If you're a man and this is your age, you should be at a certain level, or you
Right.
should have done this and that. And that can kill a passion. And I'm not saying those things are bad, they're good. But if it doesn't align with who you are and your joys and your dreams and the things that light you up, then it shouldn't be on top of your priority list, because that's other people's passions, that's other people's dreams. And so part of it is just kind of to, and I tell people, detox from social media, detox, just sit in silence and try to listen to what's going on inside of you. And there's always, I truly believe that in all of us there's